to know your places. Never stray from your places. Always stay in your life and know your places.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? The Ricky Harris here, coming to you loud, live, and in color for my Places Pick of the Week. Yes, I know we're not recommending shows right now because we're not doing shows, but there is an individual here who has got a new position in the Chicago theater scene and who is just making her voice heard and making her presence known. And she is our Places Pick of the Week. Let's give a round of applause to Erica Daniels. So first off, congratulations on your new position, Executive Artistic Director. Now, this is the blending of two positions?
It is, but we're restructuring the whole thing so that my strengths will be a part of the new position, or like the things I've done for 30 years. And then we will take things off of my plate that somebody else will be even stronger in. So we sort of took the artistic director job and the executive director job and said, what are the most important skills that Erica could do that keep us going? And sort of combined my 28 years of artistic work from Steppenwolf and Second City. But also it turns out, Ricky, I'm a pretty good fundraiser because I think I know how to talk about the art, right? And I can make people feel included in the process of making the art happen, and then they invest in it. So I think there's a big connection there. I think it's why a lot of artistic directors spend a lot of their time raising money, because people want to know about the art. So that will stay on my plate, as will, marketing with the marketing team and the fundraising team. But things like typing out contracts. And I spend a lot of time talking about our facilities because we're a condominium. Believe it or not, Victory Gardens is a condo. I'm not even kidding. And we have a condo association. So there are hours and hours that I spend like talking about shared roof costs and things that are, and looking at financials for things like that. So we'll be hiring a leader in finance and management to take on a lot of that work, and making a new position, an associate artist position, to work on artistic producing, and might be a director who wants to direct on the season. I'm not a director, as well.
You won't be directing.
No, I've spent most of my life, I have a degree in acting, that was my background. And then I really went right into casting. So I've taught all over the place, and done, as our friend was just saying, I was at Carthage for a little while, but never took the teaching into a directing thing, and really don't have that interest. I think there's an art in casting and producing, and that's what I'll continue. And we just promoted another person from the organization, Roxana Connor, to really, she's been a thought leader with me for the last year, and the staff just trusts her implicitly. So we're getting her more trained on HR practices, and she'll be Director of Education and HR, though she leads our community engagement work, and she leads a lot of our strategic thinking as well with other department heads.
Cool. I have to sit down with her too.
She's a rock star. She is. Yeah.
Great. So what are some of the strengths that you bring to this position, and that we can see that, because we know that you've been at Steppenwolf, Second City, what can we expect from you now in this new role?
Well, I think it's a totally different time right now, right, Ricky? So like right now, and I think the reality probably for the next 2.5 years for most people working in the arts is like survival. I'm not trying to be reductive. I think what has happened since March, right? Like we all shut down March 12th. That's the date that lives in infamy for me. Thursday, March 12th, all the theaters and the dance companies and the symphonies, we all said we got to stop producing. And I think naively, myself, I thought this can be 8 weeks, can be 4 weeks. And, now we're 3 months into this, looking at 2 years potential of needing to make radical changes in how we produce and have our audiences feel comfortable in our space, how our artists feel like we have mitigated as many risks as possible, have our staff feel that way. So, the challenge of this moment is very different than the overall challenge you think you're going to get into. I mean, originally I was excited about carrying forth the mission and engaging some young new artists across our city. I remain excited about that. And yet, I'm staring at charts about, should we create automatic faucets for the bathrooms, the restrooms, so patrons and staff don't have to touch things? How do we cleanse our air filters and our HVAC properly? How are we going to temperature check people when they walk in? We rely on the saints. Will they want to be back in public spaces? They're an older audience. So do we need automatic doors if we don't have saints? And I think there's also there's an unknown about how many people we will eventually be allowed in a space. So unfortunately, I'm spending a lot of time right now, and have been for the last 3 months, what we all call scenario planning, going, if we produce by September, if we produce by December, if we produce by January, if we produce by March, if we produce by June, what does it look like over the course of a year? And what do we need to raise financially? If we're not making earned revenue, we have to be raising money. Right. So, we have to raise a significant amount of money in order to make it to June 2021. It's pretty significant. So, it's not in the hundreds or the thousands. It's more than that. So you've got to, and we're compared to other huge organizations or bigger organizations, that's good news. Being able to say it's the low millions is actually doable compared to some of our sister and peer organizations. So, my time right now has been spent on things I don't think anyone prepares for when they enter a career in the arts. I think, obviously, since I also worked at William Morris in New York for a couple of years in 99, 2000, and 2001 in the theater division. So I've always worked with playwrights and directors. That's always been, after I was an agent in Chicago for actors, when I moved to New York, it was to work with writers and directors. So I've always worked with, I was working with people like Kenneth Lonergan and Susan Laurie Parks at the time, and John Patrick Shanley, in post his heyday in the 80s, but during Moonlight. Moonstruck. So it's, I've always had a penchant to working with new work. That's been my passion. I think when I found my way to Steppenwolf, it was a real artistic engine of puzzle piecing and casting and running the school. But it's also, it's a lot of people skills and negotiating personalities and making sure the right people are in the room. And I think, obviously was mentored very heavily by Martha Lavey there over, 15 years. And eventually started producing and working with her in marketing and fundraising and producing, and worked on, Airline Highway with Joe Mantello, who I admired watching that process. And I think, I left Steppenwolf in a moment of a transition where it felt like the right moment to try something new. I think this is what I believe, and I know I might not everybody agrees with me, but I do think it was the new artistic director's purview to make decisions for the organization in that moment. And I didn't want to be the stick in the mud in the corner, either thinking we tried that, it didn't work, or even just seeing things change that I had created. Either would have been unhealthy for me and for the new people that were part of the team. It just didn't seem, Anna and I get along great. And I left on my own accord because I thought it would just be unhealthy for me to to be sitting there watching things shift that I had been a part of for 15 years. It just didn't feel like that would be good for me.
Time to let it go and let it do its own thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that is, you know, there's a lot of staff there that of course I've worked with, but there's new people in that artistic office that are driving that engine. And that's as it should be for her time there. And I just didn't want to watch things disappear that I had been proud of. And not that much of that has disappeared, to be honest. But when you're in an emotional state, you just don't make those decisions. You make decisions. I went to Second City because I really just thought it'd be fun. Like I was like totally different, super fun.
Oh, yes.
And while I still have some close friends there, I can honestly say it wasn't the right fit probably for them. It wasn't the right fit for me. I'm there. People live and die by Second City, and they have staffers that have been there for 30, 40 years. And I'm just not going to, I would rather go to the mat for a new play than for improv. It's, you know, it's just that simple. That's my passion. And I think the work that I was most interested in doing there, I think to be candid, when I got there, I don't think they had a full understanding of how the model at Second City is very unique to Second City in terms of how they compensate actors and pay for like a writing fee, but they don't pay royalties. It's a very specific contract for Second City. But when you move that out of the building, you have to pay for royalties. And I got there and there wasn't a big understanding of all of that. So what they hired me to do was going to cost so much more than they ever imagined, because it's basically, they hired me to almost do nonprofit theater in a profit model. And it doesn't correspond.
Right.
You know, I remember at one point somebody was like, well, why do you do this if you don't make any money? And I said, well, you know, it's nonprofit, but it was, so, you know, and it was challenging. I was there for the fire and obviously had to deal with that. And I think some of that has helped with the COVID situation in terms of remembering best practices from there, in terms of checking in on staff and making sure, you know, nobody hears half of what you're saying on a Zoom, is what I heard in a really good adaptive leadership call, that like, if you don't start by like front loading it with like what the impact might be on a person, that's really all they're thinking about. Like, how will this affect me? And I realized like a few weeks into the COVID crisis that I was trying to be really transparent with like where VG was and what we were doing. And I went to this webinar and this guy was like, nobody's listening to that until you tell them what the impact is for them personally. Yeah. And I was right. We are all like, I've got to actually lead with empathy, before practicality, and try to balance that, which is really challenging. Like balancing reality with optimism is challenging. So after I left Second City, you know, Che reached out and and on Facebook Messenger of all things, and was like, "Can we talk?" And you know, I think the work that has been going on at Victory Gardens is amazing and moving and important. And you know, what the shift that he and that theater made in Chicago in the last decade is critical for. It's critical work, and it's critical for our future. And it is deeply reflective of Chicago and the country. And I think about the events we're all like living through right now. And I go, these are moments that Victory Gardens responds to. These are moments that we, you know, we are with our community. And so I have no intentions as I move forward of changing any of the important values and vision that have been set forth in the last, I would say in the last 40 years. I think Denis Zajic really did open doors for the Charles Smiths and the Chuck Smiths. It was a different time, obviously, but and then Che like busted it open.
Yes.
But I think the place has always been about creating a socially just world. And that is what is important to me about theater, that we can change minds and we can change people's actions, hopefully, by having them sit in a shared space watching somebody else's story for 90 minutes. That's my hope, 2 hours, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then what do they do with that?
Okay.
You know.
Cool. And so, you know, with any new leadership, you know, there's always some new conflicts that come along.
What are you talking about?
But, you know, I think all artistic directors deal with this when they come into a new position. So how is your position on this, the Playwrights Ensemble, on the board and all this?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I absolutely respect and admire anyone who has an issue or disagrees with our process. I have no problem with that, Ricky. And I have no problem with people voicing dissent and that. You know, I think there was more of a process than people like know, but it was more of internal, like funders and staff and consultants and search firms. But people were, I mean, there was a process that had started on like multiple tracks. Like I was certainly not the first idea. It was not the first idea to do this. This was like a later idea after we had engaged conversations and gotten proposals from search firms and things like that. I think, could we have been better about some of the transparency? Looking back, obviously, right? Like obviously,
Right.
We did try to engage like one of the playwrights in conversation. So we tried to at least be honest in that moment. I think also, though, sometimes what gets said can be, you know, in moments of phone and Zoom, interpretation is really hard, you know, hard to make sure that everybody is truly in sync. I admire, obviously, all of the playwrights that are part of the ensemble. You know, the issue really is, it's, you know, the current playwrights ensemble, the seven who resigned, you know, four of them were actually retired in 2019, and 2 are retired at the end of June. It's an appointment, a 7-year appointment by the artistic director, and it was done for like 5 of them by June of this year. So I think, you know, I think for the board, it was, well, these are appointments and they're done. So these aren't lifelong appointments, and you know, they are certainly always, their art and their presence is welcome at Victory Gardens whenever they would want. I mean, I'd be honored to present any of them. But it's not like an ensemble like Steppenwolf or Looking Glass where, you know, it's really, if we were presenting one of their plays, they would be there like a playwright. But that was really what the role was. So it's a complicated thing. I'm not disagreeing that they wanted to have a voice and that didn't happen, and I'm fine with them being upset. I wish I wish I could have had an opportunity to I've engaged with a couple of them, and I feel like that's been really productive, and I'd welcome the opportunity to engage with the rest of them. They're great writers. But whoever the artistic director would have been, they more than likely would have formally moved them to an alumni status and made the decision, are we bringing on a new, younger, different group of writers? The literary manager and I really had that conversation before the letter, like, okay, at some point we'll have to reach out to them and officially move them to alumni status. And it just didn't seem like a rush. I mean, technically, Che is still the artistic director till the end of June. So I wasn't in a rush to like step in and like make changes. And perhaps in not doing that, it also felt like a disconnection to people. And I'm sorry if that's very likely could be the case. And I own that, you know.
Now, is that all on you, or does the board take some of that responsibility as
I
well?
think my board chair and I, share it in terms of, we have a great board. I really do have to say that it's about a little under 30 people, 50 something percent are women, and about 40 some odd percent are people of color. So
Right.
it is a diverse board. It's not, a bunch of 70, 80-year-old white guys sitting in a room making decisions. And we had very healthy, robust conversations about all of this, because I was not unaware of some of the challenges that would probably face us if we went in this direction. So it's not like I went into that blindly, Ricky.
Right.
And we really talked it through. We really had a lot of conversations. I think, in the end, my board chair really is taking responsibility, like I am, that to have, he thought he was being clear when he talked to, an ensemble playwright, and he did respond to that first. As a board, in his name, we responded to that very first email. We did respond.
Mm-hmm.
I think, looking back, if I reread it, which I haven't reread, was it open to interpretation? I'm sure it was, right? Like that's the challenge with that. But he definitely has taken ownership that, like, certain constituents he could have called before the announcement. He's not, he has been involved with Victory Gardens for a number of years, and he's been the board chair, or a board member, at least during Che's entire tenure. Mm-hmm. And he has been incredibly giving of his time as well as his resources. Like, without him, I wouldn't have a job. Nobody might have been employed in the last 10 years. I mean, he's been it's public record. So, but he's been incredibly generous in making sure the mission and vision of Victory Gardens survives. And so, he's a really good guy, and we might have made some mistakes along the way of this process. And we've owned that to different people. But I think our intentions about what we see and what we want for VG and what we want for the artists who have been in that space over the last decade, they are true, and they hopefully will be able to be back in the space so that we can show that, as opposed to just say that. That's the other challenge right now.
Yes.
I totally understand that people want me to earn trust, and I am aware that I have to do that, but it's hard to do when you're sitting on Zooms and in your apartment all day, and you can't be in a shared space with people. So, it will be a challenging, it's going to be a challenging year for everybody, but I know on top of the regular challenges, I have to be really focused on making sure that the artists who we are engaging with feel heard and seen and supported, and that we make positive changes, whatever those are, so that happens for folks.
I think that's great. Thank you for just sharing that and being so transparent with that, just really owning that. And I think that's something that the artists will welcome to hear, because oftentimes artists will have our side and we'll say what we have to say, but then we rarely get to hear the other side. So yeah. Thank you for my platform, right?
Yeah. And Ricky, I've said this to specific people, but I really, like, if anyone wants a one-on-one with me about the process or just to have a candid conversation, I really am welcoming those. I'm the last thing I am doing is not engaging in the conversation. The only way that I think progress will get made in this situation, among many others, is communication. So I'm all about somebody emailing me or calling my cell and saying, hey, can we schedule a Zoom? Which I think is better, just to be able to see people.
Yes.
But I mean, I wish in person we could do it in person, but until that moment, but yes.
Great. Thank you. All right. Well, how are you doing during this worldwide pandemic?
Oh my God. How am I doing? I have my moments, right? Like, it's, I'm trying to do, like, 30 minutes of yoga a day just to breathe, because I realized I was just drinking a lot of white wine, like a lot. Just a lot of wine. And like any like self-care was going out the window. I was like, oh, I haven't showered in 3 days. I haven't worn pants that are not elastic in 3 months. So God knows what that's going to look like. I'm married, so my husband and I are here, and it's funny, we've like staked out our places in the house, right? Like somehow I picked the television room, and this is my space, and I have 2 cats, George and Martha. I don't know if you can see, George is right there. There's George.
Oh, hey, George.
I don't know. So George and Martha are my cats. They tend to stay by me. My husband tends to be in the back of the house, which is where the kitchen is. And there's a nice little like indoor porch area. And then once in a while, one of us needs the other space. And we like politely ask the other to like, can I use your space? It's so weird how like we just like claimed our spaces. We are not the type of people that are like, I know people that are like cooking and baking and this and that. I'm like, no, not me. I am working really, really long hours. I mean, that is the thing. I get up at like 8 and I am on the couch by 9. And so this is the list of people who donated money, even $5 or $1 to Victory Gardens. And I spend hours emailing each one of them back, thanking them personally. Those come from me. I did it for Fun Home also, which was really fun because then people were writing back and forth, and that was really moving because we for Fun Home, we reached people in 30 countries. So to get emails from somebody in Australia or Japan about how they needed theater, and we provided that, was really moving. But I spend a lot of time on webinars and meetings talking about scenario planning. I spend a lot of time with the artistic team trying to figure out, can we produce certain shows by September, by October, or are there elements in them that will be very challenging and we need to postpone them, right? Like, you just have to have conversations with directors and writers. Like, could you reimagine this? Or this show has singing and dancing and fights and intimacy, and how am I doing that? And then trying to figure out when people are available. It's a really challenging time because we don't know what the unions will tell us about some of the safety and sanitation rules. And of course, there's equity, but then there's also the directors union. There's also the designers union. So we're getting it from 3 different places. The rules we'll have to follow. And then there's, trying to stay on touch of, or is there state funding, public funding? The government's PPP keeps shifting. So you're trying to find out what's forgivable from this loan. And can I keep my staff on for as long as possible?
Yeah.
And then, I spend time talking to board members and donors and trying to just stay connected and relevant, right? Like you want to that's the challenge right now. So my days are pretty full. I'm not going to lie. And then, I don't know, we're watching, what is it? Dead Again? Is that the show? The Christina Applegate and Linda Cardellini show. I can't even remember the name right now. Dead to Me?
Dead to Me.
Great. We love that. We went through Tiger King like everybody else, of course. Oh my God. You couldn't look away from that train wreck. We watched like Little Fires Everywhere. What we keep doing is subscribing to a channel for like a free month, watching what we want, and then bailing. That's pretty much how we're spending COVID. Like, what do we want to watch? We've been also going through all of Parks and Rec because we had never watched that as individuals. So I actually do think I've turned into Leslie Knope over the years a little bit. But yeah, we're pretty, yeah, I'd say wine, yoga, cats, television, and work. That is rinse and repeat. That's about. I do drive to Victory Gardens, like 3 times a week. I'll go after this to pick up the mail, and then God bless, if there's a check, the finance assistant lives 2 blocks east of me, so I drive to her and I pass it off. And if we have to cut a check for an artist or a teaching artist or something, I sign the check. I mean, it's this whole hysterical routine that we have come up with to make sure we're paying people properly and we're depositing things. But it's pretty silly. I mean, it's crazy. People are like, have gone to the office and taken their printers home with them.
Well, it looks like you're doing a nice balance of some self-care and getting some work done, and that's good to hear.
You have to.
What is one place you want to go to as soon as we're fully open? Where does Erica Daniels want to go?
So our favorite place in the world is in Puerto Vallarta. My husband and I have gone every year for the past 6 years, and I've gone to the same place a few times before we were even married. And then I was like, this is where we're going. By the way, it's this little boutique hotel in Puerto Vallarta where the staff has been the same for the 11 years I've been going. And you see the same guests. If you go at a certain time, you see the same guests every year from Canada or from, there are a couple people from Chicago or Minneapolis or LA. And so we kind of feel like we love certain restaurants in Puerto Vallarta. We love the art and the people, and we love sitting and just reading. We are not adventurers. This is the exercise we do on a vacation.
Right. Yeah, I get
that is about it while sitting at the pool. We're not like people that are like, we got to go hiking. When we take a vacation, we're like, hello, disconnect. I would like us to get back there next year. We'll see. I have, my dad is 86, my mom is 80, and they're in Arizona. So I feel a real pull to make sure I get out there to see them as soon as I feel comfortable traveling. It's that's, I think, the weirdest and saddest and most challenging part of this is when you have family that are elderly and you know you can't get to them or sick or with a disability, whatever the case may be. I think that potential inability to get to somebody is something that's very mentally wearing on people.
Yeah, I get it. But yeah, to want to be there, I understand.
Yeah.
And lastly, what is your favorite live/YouTube channel recommendation show that you know of?
I'm on it. What are you talking about?
Places.
Yes. I mean, I have to be honest, I don't watch much else, but I watched your stuff when you first emailed and I was roaring. So now I'm going to have to watch you. You're my number one.
Come on. Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know what half these people are doing. I don't even know what the TikTok is. I'm like, I have to ask my nieces and nephews, what's a TikTok? What is that? That's the funny part, Ricky. I'm like not on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, and I'm not on TikTok, and I don't know what TikTok even is. So when you said places, what's your favorite thing? I'm like, well, you are now.
There we go. I'm here for it. Cheers. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for talking to me today.
Oh my God, Ricky, thanks for having me.
Yes, wish you all the success in your new position. And as soon as we can be around each other, I look forward to all of that wonderfulness that Victory Gardens will continue to bring, and just with your leadership and, just do the thing.
Oh my God, Ricky, so great to see you and hear you and see that laugh and that smile. Thank you for making my Friday end on a beautiful note.
Well, thank you and have a great day.
All right. Bye, hon.
Thanks. So, congratulations to Erica Daniels on officially being Places Recommended.
Your places, they were straight Blow on it before you sip the tea. Blow on it before you sip the tea. Blow on it before you sip the tea. Blow on it.
Places